Well, let's look at this word, Mark chapter 12. Mark chapter 12, if you have your Bibles. Mark chapter 12, verse 41. I entitled this series that I've started, that I'm going to do for about 3 weeks, called All In. Somebody say, All In. All in. All in means you don't come in halfway. You don't come in half-stepping. You don't go in. I don't know how many of you like to get in the water. Like not to bathe, but like a pool or a lake or an ocean to go swimming. Anybody like to get in the water to go swimming besides me? I love it. I love it. Here's what I learned a long time ago. When you just get in ankle-deep water, it's not too fun. It's not. I mean, what you going to do in ankle-deep water? Wash your feet. If you get in knee-deep water, it's a little better, but it still ain't all that fun, right? It's hard to swim. My knees are pretty high because I got long legs, but bottom line is, even that's not that good. I mean, I tried to swim in knee-deep water, and it's just like you're hitting the bottom all the time, right? But when you get waist deep, now you're getting to feel something, right? And then you get chest deep, and then you get it where it's over your head. Now you're in an adventure. You're in an adventure. And I love the adventure of the deep. And here's what I've learned, that when I go all in, I'm not going ankle deep, I'm not going knee deep, I'm not going waist deep, I'm not going chest deep, I'm jumping into the deep end. And when you jump into the deep end with Jesus, it never runs out of adventure. So here's what I began to look at. As I looked at this coming into the Easter season, what was Jesus doing? What was he saying? What was going through his mind as he was about to face the cross? We're going to get to Easter and Good Friday and Palm Sunday, where he comes into Jerusalem, where Good Friday he's crucified, and Easter Sunday where he's resurrected. But what was he doing before all that? What was he saying? And here's what I've been looking at this for a few weeks. This really, I've never looked at it through these lenses of what was it like if you only knew you had 7 to 10 days left? How would that change you? How would that change what you say? How would that change what you do? How would that change who you are? If you knew you only had 7 days left before you would leave this lifetime as you know it and you would go to heaven, what would you do different? And I wanted to see, did Jesus do anything different? And you know what I discovered as I looked at the things he said from the time he came in to Jerusalem on Palm Sunday to the time he was crucified on Friday in that 5 or 6 day window? You know, I think there was a significant shift in what he was saying and how he was saying it. In fact, everything he taught during that time was mostly in parables, but he gave usually a one sentence or phrase explanation of the parable. And then on top of that, he didn't do a lot of other things, like a lot of healing or a lot of different miracles. He was just speaking what he knew could invest in their life for all of eternity. It gets real. Some of the stuff he says gets serious. It's not just the pretty stuff anymore. He's only got 7 days to say it in person. Just think about it like this. What if you had 7 days with your family and you knew you'd be gone forever? Would you say things differently? What would you say? That makes you think, doesn't it? Jesus knew. He knew that on Friday he would be crucified. He knew on Sunday he would rise from the dead. He knew he only had a window to deposit in their souls the very seeds that were produced 30, 60, 100-fold that would result not only their eternity, but many others, even us today. The very things Jesus said in that window still affects us 2,000 years later. That's some pretty powerful words. So I want to look at this. I start with this illustration that he used. It wasn't a story illustration. It was an actual illustration. It was an actual moment that happened. And I never thought of it, that I knew about this story. You'll recognize it when I read it. But I never thought the fact that it happened in this window. This story happened in the 7-day window. That Jesus was about to be crucified. His last 7 days. this story happens. Jesus, I'm going to read it out of the Mark. It's in Luke also. Mark chapter 12, verse 41. Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Now, how many of you know Jesus was not having a great track record with offerings being collected? You didn't know that? Let me redefine that word for you. Judas. He was his treasurer. He was the guy taking money for himself. So his track record was not good. His offerings looked good when they received them, but then when he checked the bank account, it was pretty low. Now, of course, Jesus is Jesus. He knows it. But isn't it interesting? He never ran Judas off. He kept him close. He even washed his feet. That'll make you think twice. You steal money from me, I may steal those shoes once I take them off to wash your feet. It's hard for me to believe he kept them that close and loved on him that much. Right? Wow. So here's Jesus, and he's using one of the only illustrations in this 7-day window that we have record of. They're sitting in the temple area, and a place where they put the offerings, they're sitting across from it so they can have good visual of it. I think Jesus chose the seats, and I think Jesus made sure the apostles were where they could see it and they could hear him, because he knew what was coming. He knew exactly what was coming. And many rich people threw in large amounts. In other words, they're making a show of it, right? How they're dressing, how they're acting. You know, they're making sure you see they got a big pile of money they're putting in. And he's making a point of it. Now, most rich people don't do that, actually. They're pretty private with their money. But people that want to be seen, they make sure you see them. How many of you know what I'm talking about? But a poor widow, not got a husband, by herself. A poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents, about like 2 pennies today. 2 copper coins. In that world where all these rich people are making a show and putting their money in, here comes a woman that's got nothing and has nothing to offer and is not valuable to anybody in the society, and sad to say, not even valuable in the church, and just puts in 2 copper coins. I'm telling you right now, the attitude in the room was, why is she taking up space? That would have been the attitude in the room. Look what happened. Verse 43. Calling his disciples to him. He's getting their attention. Hey, boys, listen. Jesus said, truly I tell you, listen to what I'm about to say. This poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. Now, if you just put a period there, it doesn't make sense, right? Because they saw the big money bags that the rich people put in, but they saw her put in 2 small copper coins, and that it doesn't make sense. But he explains. Verse 44. They, all the rich people that put big amounts in, gave out of their wealth. And it's probably they had enough that whatever they gave looked like a lot, but it didn't affect them. But she, out of her poverty, listen to this phrase, put in everything, all she had to live on. Father, in the next 15 minutes, I pray, Lord, that we will hear from heaven, and our lives, Lord, will be forever changed. Because we'll recognize the clarion call that you are making in these last few days of your earthly life to be all in is the same call you're making to us today. And I pray, God, that you would work in such a way, Lord, that our lives would never, ever be the same. That we'll be like this poor widow woman. We'll put in everything we got, all we have to live on. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, I want to give you a couple observations, and then I want you to see what Jesus was doing. The observations about this particular illustration. Again, it's not a made-up illustration. They're actually sitting in the church, watching the offering being taken, and they watch all the rich folk give their money, and they watch this poor widow woman give hers. And Jesus speaks to the boys and says, hey, pay attention right here, because she gave more than they did. Why? Because she put in all she had. She was all in. It was not a little bit. It was not a token. It wasn't even a tithe. It was 100% of all she had. We get upset over the word tithe. We get upset over some offerings. We get upset because this woman gave everything she had. She was all in. Now, I'm not taking an offering today and asking you to empty your bank accounts. I'm not that guy. I am the guy that I'm asking you not to give what money you got. I'm asking you to give you. All of you. Not part of you, but all. When God's got all of you, that includes anything that's attached to you. Are you with me now? Right? And so if he says to you, I want you to give toward this missionary, I want you to give toward this project, I want you to give toward your church, I want you to give, then money's not an issue. What if he says, I want you to go and serve, I want you to give, I want you to go and give some time, I want you to be there to be a blessing, I want you to serve on the altar team, I want you to serve on the worship team. It's not an issue when you're all in. What if he says to you, take one of these cards and give it to that guy that drives you crazy in your neighborhood? Or at your work. And you're going, if I do that, then I got to be accountable to the fact that I'm a representative of Christ. I'm a Christ ambassador. Yeah, when you're all in, you're all in. It doesn't matter, right? The question is, are we all in? Jesus, in this illustration, as well in the dialogue of the last 7 days, is speaking a centralistic message of being all in. In fact, he not only calls you to it, he illustrates himself through it. We're going to talk about that all the way up to Easter Sunday, how that God is all in on this. He's all in on you. Isn't it amazing? We want God to be all in on us, but we're not willing to be all in on him. Are you with me? Come on, don't get mad with me. I'm just telling you what happened with Jesus, right? Look at this. The story is found after his Jerusalem entry, Palm Sunday, during the last week of his earthly life. This story of this woman is found in that window. That blows my mind because it almost seems out of place to all the teaching he's doing. But the story's right there, and I believe it's because it's the perfect illustration for everything he said. And when I began to look at it through those lenses, I went, wow, how does Jesus set that up? I work for the perfect illustrations. He just watches one and says, watch this. It's an observational lesson among a menu of teaching in parables. And I'm gonna highlight a majority of them. I won't get all of them, but in these next 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But you can read all of this from the time Jesus came in to Jerusalem at Palm Sunday, and it is a real life illustration of the call he is giving to his disciples during an intense week of passion. We call it the Passion Week. It's his last week, and in the middle of all that, he's sitting down across the way from where they're taking the offering, and he's waiting for this lady to get there. I'm convinced he's God. He's the God-man. I'm convinced he knows. I'm convinced he knows what she's going to put in. I'm convinced he knows what the people before her and after her are going to put in. And I'm convinced he had the apostles close enough he could just say, hey, listen to this. And he says it to them. And he says, this woman is all in. When he said this woman is all in, what do you think he's saying to them? I think he's saying, this woman is all in. She's a poor widow lady. What about you? Why else would he point it out? He just wants him to notice this woman? Or is there a lesson in this moment? I think there's a lesson in this illustration. And the call is a clarion call. And as you look at everything he taught through this, look, I'm going to preach a couple of these things, and let me just tell you, you might want to find out which Sunday I'm preaching what, because some of it you won't like. I'm just going to be honest. When I get to the Pharisees and Sadducees, woe, he starts it out. There's 7 woes, and he says, woe unto you, Pharisees and Sadducees, scribes. When I get to those 7 things on one Sunday, and I'm not going to tell you which Sunday because I want you to come, you're not going to like it. I'm just telling you. I've only preached it once in a tent meeting in Bartow, Florida, that the senior adults were hosting a revival in a tent meeting and asked me to preach it as the youth pastor, and God led me to the 7 woes. And I thought, this is not the smartest thing I've ever done in my life, but it was a thing that broke things spiritually in our church. And I'm saying to you, well, these things Jesus said in these last 7 days, or 5 or 6 days really, are intense. And this included, this illustration, he says it so that they would get it. Let's look at this. I want to give you 3 real quick. Real quick. I got about 3 minutes, 4 minutes each on these. Look at this in Mark 11. We'll back up to Mark 11. On reaching Jerusalem, Mark 11:15. On reaching Jerusalem, this is when he came in, Palm Sunday. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts. Listen to this. When you show up in a parade, and they throwing down palms and jackets. We're going to talk about that on Palm Sunday. And they're shouting, Hosanna to the King. And everybody's excited because they think he's going to be the next king of Israel, not the king of eternity. And so they're all excited about who they thought he was going to be, not who he really was. And he comes in and they lay it all down for him and celebrate him. And the first thing he does when he gets there, he goes into the church house and he starts flipping tables. You know what I mean? Y'all wouldn't like that. I mean, one day I'm going to illustrate that. I'm looking, I ain't even got anything up here to flip. I'll flip this box right here. You know, he just starts flipping things. Y'all let me know if it's coming down. He does that, right? It's the same scenario. I mean, he's walking in the outer courts flipping tables. Look at this. Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and benches of those selling doves. I want to know what happened to the doves. I mean, do they have dinner? What happened to the doves? And would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts because they had made a mockery of the sacrificial system. It wasn't about necessarily having the right product for that and being able to offer that. It was what had happened as a result of that, and that is they had made a mockery of his worship. And as he taught them, he said, is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers. So here's the first thing. I want you to see this all-in mindset of Jesus. When you are all in, we surrender his house to him. And there's a lot of ways I could preach that, and I don't have all the time to do it. I could preach it, Pastor, it ain't your house, it's God's house. I could preach it, parishioner, it ain't your house, it's God's house. I could preach it, church, it ain't your house, it's God's house. Right? But I want to bring you to a place where it's New Testament principle, but the house of God is not a temple or a tabernacle as it was in the Old Testament or in this moment in the Gospels. The house of God became you and me. We would be the temple of the Holy Spirit. So if we are all in, you got to surrender his house to him. That means your life, your body is not yours anymore. You've been bought with a price. That's an all-in statement. I'm not my own. I've been bought with a price. I don't get to choose what I do and don't do. I can. He gives you that privilege if you want to take it. But what he wants is a complete surrender of his house. I don't have time to be at church. I don't have time to pray. I don't have time to be in the Word. I don't have time to worship. I don't have time. I don't have room in my house for God to show up. I don't have room for God to alter my life. I got a good thing going with my life. I don't need God up in here to mess it up. We don't say that. But we have to ask the question, are we living it? Because the all-in person surrenders the house to Him. It's not our house to make up our mind how we want to live in it. That's what they did. They started selling out in the outer courts. So they thought, well, I can make me a little side job. I can get me another stream of income. I can sell me some doves. And then everybody ain't got to go find a dove and bring a dove. Or I can sell little lambs because they may not have no little lambs to offer to sacrifice. Or I can sell the calf or the cattle. I can sell all the sacrificial stuff because they're going to have a little side stream of income. Look, when did we forget that God is the source of our life and the source of our income, and we don't have to create all those sources. We just have to learn to surrender our house to Him, and He will give us all these things. All in. This lady gave all she had. Here, the house. He calls for the house. First thing in, He calls for the house. Then look over at Mark chapter 12. Later, they sent some of the Pharisees and the Herodians to Jesus to catch Him in His words. They're trying to trap Him. They're trying to trap Him again. They came to Him and said, "Teacher, we know that you are a man of integrity." When somebody starts out with that line, let me just tell you, they are trying to get you. We know you're an honest one, preacher. But let me ask you a question. They are trying to trap your soul right then. Just be warned. Happened with Jesus, it'll happen with you. So they said, "Teacher, we know that you are a man of integrity. You are not swayed by others, but you pay no attention, because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth." Now listen, if they believed those statements, why are they even asking the question they ask? They're trying to trap Him. In another place it says that. So is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we? Now let me help you here. Let me put it in current day. Are you going to pay the IRS by April 15? You with me? We know somebody is, or we think they are, because they already gave an invite to their tax lady. We heard that earlier. Right? That's going to happen. So, that day's coming, right? Tax day is coming. Here's what they're saying. Should we pay our taxes, or can we say because of religious principles, we don't have to? Well, let's look at what Jesus said. But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. In fact, He said, "Why are you trying to trap me? Bring me a denarius," that's a coin, "and let me look at it." And here's what He said. Listen to this. They brought the coin, and He asked them, whose image and whose inscription are on the coin? And they said, "Caesar's." Jesus said, "You're right. So give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." Everybody knows to give to Caesar what is Caesar's. But many people don't remember He said, "and to God what is God's." This is all in the window. This is in the 6 or 7 day window here before He's crucified. It's one of the last things He says. They're trying to trap Him. He says, "Yeah, pay your taxes, but you better give to God what's God's." Now let me help you. When you are all in, we give to God's what is His. Can I tell you what is His? It's all His. It's all His. Your life, your choices, your decisions, your schedule, your family, your relationships. There's nothing left out. When we are all in, it's all His. And not only am I not my own, everything I have contact is not mine. It all belongs to him. I don't get to choose. Well, you're a pastor and we pay you not to choose. No, you pay me to be a pastor, but I choose because of who I serve. I've told you I love you. You can't do anything to make me stop loving you. I mean, that's what I tell my kids and what I tell everybody I've ever pastored, because it's true. Now, some of you tried. Some people have tried in my life, 40 years of pastoring, to make me not love them, but God has helped me. I love you no matter who you are, what you do, or what choices you make. Even if you attack me or my family or the church. And me, I don't care so much about. My family kind of gets to me, and my church really gets to me. You attack my church. I mean, I was over there watching the students yesterday, and I was just sitting there watching people in the room and watching the judges, and I'm thinking, I'm telling you, I'm going to confess before God right now. Driving home yesterday and last night and this morning before I heard from Pastor Andrew on the score sheets, and he has all the score sheets from the evaluators, copies of them. I'm thinking, if they have one thing to say about my family that's out of line, it's going to be on like Donkey Kong. Because I'm going to go up in there and I'm going to make sure that person never adjudicates or evaluates again in this lifetime. I mean, I just like, well, this is welling up in me because I was a little concerned. But I want you to know, Pastor Andrew came in, and there was one particular thing I was asking about, and he said, no, Pastor. He said, that's not how they felt. I said, really? He read their comments, the evaluators' comments, and they absolutely decimated what I was thinking, which was good, right? I went, okay. I'm not even going to tell you all the detail, just to know that's I deal with it too, right? We all deal with what's ours and what's not ours. Look, I think the church is mine. I'm not talking about the building. I'm talking about the people. I think you're mine. I'm your pastor. You're my people. That's what I think. But God reminds me, you're his people long before you're my people. Right? I'm going to love you no matter what. But he loves you in a way I'll never be able to. I'm trying to learn to love you like he loves you. But he loves you in such a deep way, it's unbelievable. So remember that it's all his. Even your family. You've heard me tell the story. I've wrestled on platforms, literally been here laying on my face, not on this platform but another one, kicking and hitting like a kid throwing a temper tantrum because I didn't want to let my family go to God. I didn't want to release my family to the Lord. I wanted to orchestrate everything about their life. I wanted to be in control of them. I wanted to be the protector of them. I wanted to do it all. And God kept telling me, you got to give them to me. And I went, good gracious. Honestly, the truth is on that particular night, I had bruises on the side of my hand and bloody toes when it was over in my shoes. That's how you think. I mean, I hate to admit that, but that's what I did. I was wrestling with God over my family. And for me, at that moment, it was because I was supposed to go on another mission trip. I was doing 3 mission trips a year at that point, and I didn't want to go because my kids were coming up, and I didn't want to leave them. What if I have an accident on the field or have a plane wreck or whatever, and I'm not here to raise them, and I'm just arguing with God about the whole thing? And God said, they're his before they're mine. It's all his. Somebody say it's all his. Last thing. All around this one illustration, all right near this one illustration Jesus gives when he says, this woman gave everything she had. She put it all in. Again, in Mark 12, a little bit later, here it is. In verse 28, one of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Notice that Jesus had given them a good answer. He asked him, he's asking Jesus now, of all the commandments, which is the most important? Again, trying to trap him. The most important one, Jesus answered, is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with, come on, say it. He didn't just say all your heart. Some of you want to stop right there. He didn't stop there. He said all your heart, soul, All your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. By the way, the guy that asked him agreed with him. Good answer. And then Jesus said, you're not far from the kingdom. Because he realized that the guy, even though he may have been trying to trap him, understood Jesus answered the best answer he could possibly give. The problem with the best answer that you could give is when we don't live the best answer. All your heart. See, a lot of people want to give him the heart because it's passion. It's the passion of who we are. Oh, the under 40, under 30, they love the passion side of it. Give me the wine, I can do it. Oh, the value for me is this the right thing. It feels good, so I'm going to do it. But the over 40 generation, not so sure about giving him the passion or heart because we may look silly, so we're going to give him the mind because if we can cognitively come up with it, we know it's real and we know it's right and we will do it. And we don't even understand the soul, which is the very life we have, surrendering it all. When you love God, he said with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and then he's back to what he said earlier. Surrender your body, your strength. He doesn't leave anything out in the alls. He states it so you will get it. Turn to your neighbor and say, you should get it. It's all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. It's your passion, it's your life, it's your intellect, and it's your body. There is nothing left out of this equation. When you are all in, you love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. He calls for all in all the way through this dialogue of this week. He doesn't leave anything out. The problem with pastors today is we want to give you 1-900 how to live life and be blessed. And you've heard me say it. I believe God wants to bless you with everybody. But I believe we do that at the expense of not giving you the total picture. We don't tell you, yeah, he wants to bless you, but he's expecting all your heart. He's expecting all your soul. He's expecting all your mind. He's expecting all your body. He's expecting all in. All in. Not in ankle deep or knee deep or waist deep or chest deep. He's expecting you to go into the adventure of the deep with him and surrender everything to him. He wants the whole house, not just the Holy of Holies. We're okay with him getting the Holy of Holies. So what that means is we're okay with him having Sunday morning in this house, but he can't come home with me. He can't have my house. And even if we let him in my house, we don't want to take him in the dark rooms of our own house. But he wants the whole house. He'll flip tables to get it. He'll run people out to get it. You don't think he's serious about the whole house? He's very serious about the whole house. He's very serious about all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength. He's very serious about it all being his. All being his. Nothing left out. And there's one more part of this verse that sometimes we miss because it's kind of secondary, because it says the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these. When you're all in, it is heart, soul, mind, and strength. But when you're all in, you love all his body. Remember, the second is like unto the first in another translation. It's worded that way. I like it because it ties the two. And in the Greek words, it does. You can't live loving God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and with all your strength without loving your neighbor. That's how strong the words are in the Greek. And if you try to love your neighbor like you love yourself without loving God, then you're not really loving God. And so the two are so intertwined together. And the Israelites would have known that from the Ten Commandments as well as the Torah. They would have understood that. That's why this lawyer said to him, you've answered well. Because all the other commandments hang on these two. They hang on these two. So when you're all in with Him, heart, mind, soul, and strength, and you're all in with them, His body. Look, can I just say one more thing? I mean, I'm all in, right? I'm all in. That means I put off my shoes and I'm deep in this hole. For folks that say, I don't like or love His church, let me help you, because there's times I've struggled with liking or loving His church because I've watched them hurt each other. I've watched them hurt other people. I've watched them not handle things well. But here's what I've learned. If I can't love His body, His church, His people, others, then I can't love Him. I'm trying to live a decapitated spiritual life. I'm trying to love the head without the body. You can't say I don't love the church and I don't want to be a part of the church and say you love Jesus. It doesn't really work. It doesn't work for God, I can tell you that. Because the very people He died on the cross for, you're saying you don't love. The very people He loved enough to die on the cross for, you're saying you don't care about. You don't like what they do. Guess what? He don't like what we do either. But He loves us, and His love is so powerful it helps us to change and become what we should. So we learn to love first, like later. If I depended on my wife just to like everything I do, and that's the only foundation for our marriage, honestly, we may not have made it all these years. Because she don't like some of the stuff I do. I mean, can you imagine having to live with me? Let's get for real. Who said that? And you was over here nodding, boy. You ain't old enough to nod. You just say, please, Jesus, bless Pastor. That's what you pray. But it's true, right? And we got to learn to love like He loves. We may not like everything, but we love Him. And when love is real, you love somebody even when they aren't likable. All in loves His body. All in loves Him. Loves His body, which is a part of Him, right? With all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, and with all our strength. All in, everything is His. All in, the house belongs to Him. Whew. Jesus wasn't playing. These last 7 days, He knew He didn't have much time, and He had to say it in clear ways. Even though it was in parables, every one of the parables has some form of explanation to it, attached to it. Not where He comes back later. He says it right then. Because He knows His time is short. Can I tell you, I think time is short? Time is short because He's coming soon. I believe that. More so than ever. In fact, in these last 7 days, He talks about that. Yeah, I probably won't even get to that. I might. We'll see what I can do. But He talks about coming soon, coming back. And that was 2,000 years ago. We're definitely much closer now than we were then. Right? He's coming soon. So time is short. And what we do, we need to do now. I don't know what we're saving up for. I get saving up for retirement. I get that's not what I'm saying. I don't know what we're saving up our energy for or our work or whatever. I don't know what we're saving for if it's not for eternity. To get to heaven and to take as many people with us as we can. That's what we're doing. That's what we should be doing. That's an all-in mentality. I'm going to heaven and I'm taking as many people with me as I can. I can't take my wallet with me. They're going to bury that in my coffin. I can't take my bank account with me. I can't even take my credit card with me or my debit card with me. I can't take my car with me. I can't take my clothes with me. I can't even take this body with me. I get a new one when I get there. I get a new house. I get everything I need. The only thing I can take with me to heaven is you and others like you. The only thing I get a real chance of taking with me is you. When I used to sit with Candace, my daughter, she's the oldest. She's 4 years older than Andrew. Andrew's 4 years older than Caleb. And I would sit with her when I'd go on those mission trips, and I would look at her and I'd say, Candace, do you love Jesus? Yes, Dad. You know I love Jesus. Now, she's all of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 when I'm doing this. Each year, 3 times a year, or 4. Well, if you love Jesus, how do you know you love Jesus? And I wouldn't give her words. I wouldn't give her leading answers. She had to answer at her level, whatever she understood. If I felt like she wasn't getting it, then we talk about it more. And I said, well, if you know you love Jesus through that, then are you going to heaven? Dad, you know I'm going to heaven. How do you know you're going to heaven, Candace? And I would talk to her about that. And I said, Candace, let me tell you something. And this was the hardest part for me to say. I usually had a big lump in my throat. You know, I'm going on this trip, and the truth is I hope to come back. I'm planning to come back. Everything's scheduled for me to come back, but it could be that I not come back. And if I don't come back, I need to know you're going to see me in heaven. You did that for a 7-year-old? A 6 and a 5 and a 4 and a 3 and a 2. Yep, I did. Never took it for granted. Still don't. And I said to them, Candace, here's the other thing. You're the oldest of your brothers. And I just need you, every time you think about it, to have this same conversation with your brothers and make sure they get there. You did that to an 8-year-old? A 12-year-old? Yep. Every year I'd go. Never took it for granted. Still don't. Still don't. I'm never going to give the devil a chance. I'm never going to give the devil a chance to disregard me or my family, disrespect me or my family, or what Jesus has done in us. I'm never going to give the devil a chance to be able to disillusion my family. I just don't take it for granted. I talk to them just like that. And so, to the point they're adults now, and Candace and her husband Aaron and family moved up here to Georgia, and they're living out toward Covington, on the other side of Covington right now. And they visited a church. They visited with us, but they visited a church over there and said, Dad, we think we want to go there. I said, cool. So they had like our Big Orange Party. They had a thing over there for all the kids, and they wanted us to come see. So we went over there and saw their thing and had a blast and walking around meeting people there. And I came across the pastor. And I said, hey, Pastor, my son-in-law said that's the pastor right there. So I went over and introduced myself. Hey, I'm Mike Tedder. I happen to pastor too. I understand you're the pastor. He said, my daughter and son-in-law and her family are coming here now. And I pointed them out. They were kind of across the parking lot. I said, that's them. I said, I'd like you to tell me every time they're not in church. Pastor, now they're 30-something years old. Absolutely I did. I ain't playing. I don't take it for granted. And then they walked up, and we all are talking together, and I told Candace and Aaron what I had told their pastor. And they said, okay. I said, look at Pastor, I ain't playing. And he said, now where do you pastor? I said, up in Decatur. He said, where in Decatur? I said, Tabernacle Church. He said, the Assembly of God Tabernacle? I said, yeah. He said, no way. And his wife's standing right there, and she goes, really? And I said, yeah. Is that a problem? I mean, it's like, it's a bad reputation. No, that's where I got saved. That's where I got discipled. Brother Bray led me to Jesus and discipled me. And I came out here and started this church in a garage in my house. And I said, well, there you go, Candace. You may not be at the Tabernacle on Sunday, but you're going to be at the Tabernacle Annex. Right? How could God put that together? Why? Because when you're all in and you don't take no for an answer, God will show up and do things for you and your family that you never dreamed possible. So, Father, in the name of Jesus, I thank you.